What's going on, everybody? Jamie here from Sharon at Sea. Hey, Sharon, Matthew, and myself, we're getting ready to go on another cruise, and we are super excited. But one thing that we always kind of reminisce about when we get ready for a cruise is what it was like when we were cruising in the old days, when we were newer cruisers. I mean, our first cruise was like 16 years ago. Back then, there weren't a lot of resources you could go to find out what to do, where to go, how to do it, how to get the most out of your cruise. All we could do was research, and keep our fingers crossed. But even with all that research, I still recall there were some things that kind of disappointed us on some of our first cruises. Well, today I thought I'd get with you guys and talk about the 5 biggest disappointments that new cruisers face when they go on a cruise, and what you can do to avoid those disappointments right after this. Real quick before we begin, if you're into cruising content on YouTube, if you love to watch cruise vlogs, hear cruise news, get cruise and travel tips, all kinds of stuff like that, we'd love for you to consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you're always aware of new content coming out. We're going to have a lot of cruise vlogs coming up in the next couple months, and you're not going to want to miss them. Alright, so let's get back to those 5 biggest disappointments for new cruisers. Starting off, number 1, we hear it all the time. New cruisers are quite often disappointed in the size of their cruise cabin. Now, one thing you need to know is the cabin on a cruise ship is, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term, pretty tiny, especially if you're traveling with your family. If there's 2 of you going and you have a couple kids in tow, it's going to get pretty crowded pretty quickly. Now, a lot of people will tell you that the cruise ship cabin is just a place to sleep. Maybe some place to store your belongings while you're cruising. But the goal is to sleep, wake up, leave the cabin, and go out and have an amazing time on your cruise. But even with that mindset, you can still find that your cruise cabin will be pretty small. I mean, the average size of a cruise ship cabin is roughly about 185 square feet, give or take a little bit. And that's going to include the bathroom, the closet, the bed, a little counter space, probably a small little sofa or chair. And like I said, it gets crowded pretty quickly. Now, if you're the type of adventurous person that says, I don't need a big cabin because I'm going to be out and about, then I wouldn't even worry about it. But if you think having a little extra room is going to be a big deal to you, then here's a couple things you can think about doing to make a better experience for yourself with the size of that cabin. Number 1, one thing we've done is we always get a balcony. It doesn't really change the square footage of the cabin. Sometimes it even makes it a little bit smaller. But adding that balcony and being able to open the blinds and open up a whole nother area you can step out to really makes it feel like the cabin is a lot bigger than it is. Also, make sure you don't overpack. It happened to us a lot in our younger years of cruising. Heck, sometimes we even do it now. But what I usually tell people is pack everything you think you're going to need, then take about 50% of that stuff out and leave it at home and take the rest, because that's all you're really going to need. The more you pack, the more you bring, the more space it's going to take up in that cabin. I mean, closet space, drawer space, that's at a premium, and you don't want to have a bunch of extra garments and things taking up room in there. So don't overpack. Also, if you really feel like you're going to need extra room, think about upgrading maybe to a suite or a junior suite. You could add anywhere from 50 to 100 square feet onto the size of that cabin. It'll cost extra money, but that's a decision that you have to make. And remember, if you feel like your cabin's a little too small, then get out of it, because that cruise ship will be huge. Make the entire ship your cruise ship cabin. Another thing that inevitably upsets or disappoints new cruisers is there is no room to hang out on the Lido deck or the pool deck. Now picture this, you get on the cruise ship on embarkation day, you're looking forward to the vacation of a lifetime with your family. The next morning you all wake up, you have a great sleep, you get up and you head down to the buffet or to the main dining room for an amazing breakfast. You go back to your cabin, everyone changes into their bathing suits, you lather up with the suntan lotion, you grab your towel, and you head on over to the Lido deck so you can get an amazing poolside chair to just crash out, relax, and enjoy a day at sea. You roll in there by about 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and what do you see? People. People are everywhere. And what you don't see? Empty deck chairs. Especially on a sea day, the Lido deck or the pool deck will fill up quickly. You get there at 9:30 or 10 in the morning and it will be full. And if there's not a person in a chair, you can count on there being a bunch of towels, bathrobes, flip-flops, suntan lotion bottles, anything in that chair for people to try to secure their chair for later. I mean, if there's not already someone's butt in a chair, you can bet someone's already chair hogging that chair. And if you don't know what a chair hog is, do a little research, you'll find out. Don't be a chair hog. Okay, I'll tell you real quick. That's the person that gets up early, goes up to the pool deck, puts all their stuff on a bunch of chairs, and then leaves and thinks they can come back 2.5 hours later and find the chair there ready for them. Many cruise ships try to monitor that. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you have to do a little self-monitoring, as a matter of fact. But that's a story for another video. But like I said, you get out to that pool deck a little late in the morning and it is packed and there's no room for you or your family. So there's one thing that we usually do to make sure that on a sea day we have some good chairs in a good area that we know we're going to enjoy, so we can kick back, relax, and have a great day. Now, we don't need to be poolside or front row or anything like that. We're just looking for 3 comfortable chairs in a good location so we can get some good sun, maybe close to a bar, maybe not too far from the food, someplace where we can hear and see the activity but not be right in the middle of it. So usually what we do on a sea day is that I myself will get up a little bit earlier. I'll go out and take a lap around the ship, try to eye up a couple of good chairs that I like. I might grab a little snack. I might grab a plate of food and coffee and such and bring it back to the cabin for Sharon and Matthew. Then I'll go back out and hang out at those chairs. And I'll bring 3 towels and I'll put the towels down on the chair, but I don't chair hog because I am sitting down in that chair waiting for Sharon and Matthew to join me. Now, as far as I'm concerned, if there's a butt in that chair, then you are not considered a chair hog, at least in my opinion. So I will relax, hang out, listen to music or whatever's going on the ship, and enjoy myself. And once Sharon and Matthew get out there, then they'll go ahead and hit up the buffet and get some breakfast, bring it back to the chairs and eat. Then I might rotate out, go get some breakfast and come back to the chairs and eat. By that time, the Lido deck is starting to fill up a little bit, but we've got the chairs that we want, in the place that we want, and we're happy and ready to kick back and enjoy the day. Now, another thing that we hear disappoints people on occasion is people say they thought that everything was included in the price. They didn't realize there would be other things to pay for on the cruise. Now, technically, you could cruise and not drop another penny once you get on the ship. There is enough food, enough types of drinks available to hold you over for the entire week. But there are a lot of extra things that you can do or be a part of that will cost extra money. Some people call it nickel and diming. Some cruise lines are a little more prevalent at doing it than others, but you can find yourself spending a lot more money on the cruise than maybe you thought you would. One big expense to consider that a lot of new cruisers don't realize is that they will automatically add tips to your onboard account at some point during the cruise. Now, you may be one of the folks that knows about it and pays ahead of time, which is cool, but there's a lot of new cruisers that don't even know that that's going to happen. I'll give you an example. On Royal Caribbean, they're going to automatically charge you $14.50 a day per person in your cabin, an overall gratuity, and that gratuity gets split between many members of the service staff on the ship. A family of 3, you're looking at paying roughly $300 in gratuity, and that's added on to your onboard account while you're cruising at some point during the week. Some cruise lines add it on day by day, some just add it on later on in the cruise. Now, it's not mandatory. Technically, you could remove those gratuities by going to customer service. Some people do that and they prefer to tip individually. And that's okay, but there's a lot of controversy when it comes to leaving tips or removing tips from your account. I'm not going to get into that here today, but just know that that's one of the extra expenses that you can face when you go on the cruise. Other things can be small things, specialty coffees, sodas not included. There might be juices, water, regular coffee, but other things they can charge extra for. Sometimes events that you want to be a part of on the ship will cost you extra. There's a lot of dining options included, but there are also some great dining options that can cost a little bit extra as well. Specialty restaurants and things like that. Even things for your children, like if you bring your kids to the onboard camp for the cruise line, you know, that care and service is going to be included. But there could be events and things like that that will cost extra. So just be aware of that and don't leave yourself too tight when you go on the cruise ship. Do your research to find out other things that might be charged for when you go on that cruise, so you're not surprised or disappointed to find that cruising's all inclusive, but there's a lot of things that you can end up paying extra for. Now, on a side note, under this category, another thing that's kind of linked to it is people get pretty upset or disappointed to find that when they put a credit card, or more importantly a debit card, attached to their onboard account, the cruise line will put periodic holds on that debit card. As you spend a little money, they'll put a hold on that dollar amount, to make sure that money is available to pay your bill at the end of the week. Now, what happens is at the end of the week, they'll hit you up for the charge for the entire bill you accumulate while you're cruising. But those holds that they put on may not drop off automatically. So that's why I'm kind of lumping this together with the whole I didn't know that I would have to pay for that type of a thing for new cruisers. Because if you live a little tight on the debit card, you might get off the ship paying $500 for your onboard expenses, but have another $400 or $500 that's in hold that won't be released for a few days, and that can make it pretty tricky on your way home. So keep that in mind as well, and be aware of that when it comes to knowing about expenses on your cruise. That's just a little extra special tip for you today. Now, another thing that always seems to happen to new cruisers, and I know it's happened to us a couple of times, even when we went on a new cruise line, when we traveled on Royal Caribbean Symphony of the Seas, but inevitably, by the end of the cruise, you're always going to discover there was something that you really wanted to do, see, or be involved in, and you just didn't know about it till the cruise was almost over. And that can be a big disappointment for people when they're on their cruise, especially new cruisers, because there's so much out there that you don't know about. You know, it's day 4 or 5 of a 7-day cruise, and all of a sudden you discover an amazing bar that you would have loved to hang out all week, or a restaurant that you would have wanted to try, but you already have reservations someplace else. Maybe you realize that they have a great cornhole game going on tonight, but you've already made plans to go to the show. I mean, things like that happen. But there's a couple things you can do to make sure that you find out about everything going on the ship so you can really maximize your experience. Number 1, every day there will be a newsletter of sorts in your cabin. Each cruise line has a different name for it, but every one of them offers it. Even on embarkation day, it'll be in your cabin, and it'll tell you about everything going on this cruise ship. Whether it's dining, whether it's events, whether it's late night deck parties, anything like that, it'll be listed in there with the time. So one thing Sharon, Matthew, and I do is we'll sit down together and we'll go through that as a family and highlight things that we really want to make sure that we do so that we don't miss out on them. Now, another thing is make sure you pay a little bit of attention to the TV in your cabin. It may talk about different things you can do on board on your TV, and when you see something that catches your eye, you can inquire about that. Don't be afraid to ask people on the ship what they might recommend that you do. If you have a great server in the dining room or a favorite bartender, let them know you're a new cruiser and you don't want to miss out on all the fun things that people love getting involved in. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. Chances are the people working on the ship will love to share the information with you. And one other little tip for you, your time is very valuable on the cruise. There's not a lot of it. Now, there'll be a lot of different offers and presentations going on that they're going to want you to come down to the lounge for or something like that. Probably the biggest one is the shopping presentation, where to shop and how to shop in the port you're going to. Well, Sharon and I found out pretty early in our cruising career that's not really something we needed to go check out. And in addition, usually a couple hours after that presentation goes on, the same thing will be shown on the television in your room. So again, keep track of what's on TV in your room, flick through the cruise line channels, and you'll be informed of a lot of different things that you might want to check out or find about things you don't want to check out. Now finally, maybe one of the biggest disappointments for new cruisers, or even any cruiser to be quite honest with you, are the long lines you can get stuck in on the cruise ship. Now listen, everything from the buffet line to the water slide line, waiting to get into a show, waiting to get into the late night comedy club. I mean, there's up to 5,000 people on that cruise ship with you. Many of them want to do the same thing that you want to do. Inevitably, you will get stuck in a line. So number 1, don't let it frustrate you. It is a little bit part of cruising. Number 2, if you can, avoid getting in lines at peak times. Don't go to the buffet at the big breakfast or lunchtime. Get there a little earlier, get there a little later. Not to mention you've already done your research and checked out the ship, so you probably know some of the secret places you can go to eat and have a much better experience. Heck, don't go to the buffet for lunch. See if you can go to the main dining room and have an amazing lunch there. If you're looking to do activities on the ship, try to do them at non-peak times as well. There's a lot of fun stuff on the upper decks to get involved in. Sports squares, sky rides, go-karts, coming up soon on the Mardi Gras, roller coasters, I mean any of that kind of stuff, plus the amazing water slides. Get on them early, right after they open up. And you've already checked out the literature in your cabin, so you already know what time they're going to open up. See how that all ties together? So get on them early and often, have your fun, and then go find something else to do. That way you're not missing out on anything on the cruise ship. When it comes to going to shows, check and see if those shows, if you can make reservations for them. We went on the Symphony of the Seas and there were extremely long lines to get into the show, but you know what we didn't have to worry about? the line we were in because it was for the reservation only line. So we got in and got our seats pretty easily while we watched 50 to 100 people stand in line waiting to get in. And that was just all because we did our research and due diligence, finding out what to expect on that cruise. Now remember, inevitably you're going to come across lines on the cruise ship. Don't let them frustrate you. Get in line with a friend or a buddy so you can chat, enjoy things, make some plans while you're in line. Or be the one to sacrifice. Go get in line while your family gets something to drink or something to eat, and let them come and find you afterwards. Take turns doing that. That way not everyone has to wait in line all the time. Now those are 5 of what I think are the biggest disappointments for new cruisers, and I'm going to end off with one really good pro tip, I like to call it. This is another great way to make sure that you don't miss out on anything and that you minimize the disappointments you have on the ship. Now, a lot of you have heard that there are Facebook groups that are created for cruises. If you're on Facebook and you go in and you search the group section, put in the name of your ship and the date that you're sailing, and you'll probably find a Facebook group. Some of them are private and you have to ask to join. Some of them will let you join right up. And in that group, you can meet a lot of other people cruising at the same time you are on the same ship. Some people make friends, they plan events and things like that. Now that's always fun. You can ask a lot of questions there, especially if you're a new cruiser. But there's one other Facebook group that you also need to join. That's the Facebook group for the same cruise you're going on, but about a month earlier. Go back about 4 or 5 weeks and join the Facebook group for that cruise. Then what you want to do is when that cruise is over, you go back into that Facebook group and you watch for posts of people talking about their experiences, what they liked and disliked. You can also get in and ask questions, because people will love to talk about what they did on their cruise. So join up with a cruise Facebook group that will already have sailed a few weeks before your cruise, and that's a great way to get in and learn a lot about what you're going to experience when you get on that ship, and you can get a lot of feedback from others on how things went for them, what they liked, what they disliked. That way you can make sure that you don't miss those can't miss cruise ship experiences. Now remember, your cruise experience is what you make out of it. Don't sweat the small stuff, keep an open mind, and go out there and have a good time. If you're a new cruiser, I hope that following some of these tips I've shared with you today will help to make sure you have an amazing cruise and you become cruise addicted just like we are. Hey, thanks a lot for watching. We hope you got a little bit out of the video today. Before you check out, please make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you always know when there's new content coming out, and there's going to be a lot of it coming soon. We have a lot of cruises lined up. Make sure you join us every Monday night on our Monday night live stream where we talk all about cruising, our cruising experience, and answer all of your questions. Join our Facebook group, Sharon at Sea Cruise Crew. And for myself, Sharon, Matthew, and everybody here at Team Sharon at Sea, again, thanks for watching and happy cruising.